Today, I will tell you about the biggest Ponzi scheme to ever go down on Wall Street and the leader behind it. First, what is a Ponzi scheme? A Ponzi scheme is a fraudulent investment operation where a firm takes in money from new investors to create revenue to then give to veteran investors and create the idea that they are receiving positive returns. So the returns are not actually made through legitimate business activities or profit made from financial trading like it should in an investment company. Ponzi schemes can either be operated by an investing company or an individual, and usually works good to lure new investors by promising high and short-term returns. Ponzi schemes heavily rely on the part of bringing in new investors to create the revenue they need to look profitable. The biggest one ever run was by a man named Bernie Madoff, which lasted from 1991 to 2008, before his actions were discovered by the FBI and SEC. Bernie Madoff only pled guilty for running this for 17 years, but his account manager said it had been going on for as much as 33 years. So who is Bernie Madoff? Bernie Madoff grew up in New York and as a young child watched his father's business fail from the steel shortage during the Korean War. Most of Bernie's close friends and family say that one reason for running this fraudulent investment business was to achieve the success and wealth that his father was unable to do. He started his first investment company in 1960 at the age of 22 by using money he made installing sprinklers to start trading penny stocks, just like our good friend Jordan Belfort. Because Madoff's company wasn't large enough to be in the New York Stock Exchange at the start, he was able to make a name for himself by trading all the scrappy bonds and stocks that the big companies didn't want to take. His biggest hit, however, was when he and his partner created technology that allowed electronic trading capabilities, which was then able to provide insight on possible future market activity. Through this so-called artificial intelligence, he was put in charge to process most of the New York Stock Exchange's orders and reported to make a nice $100 million a year. During this time, he was also voted on to be a chairman of the NASDAQ. So Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme. Bernie and four other men, Carl Shapiro, Jeffrey Pickauer, Stanley Chase, and Norm Levi, also known as the Big Four, worked together to pump investors' funds and assets through their names to Bernie, who then overlooked all of these funds. It was known after his arrest that Bernie had most of the investors' money in a single Chase bank account, which reaped upwards of $500 million, and whenever an investor wanted their returns, he would simply just take out money from that account. Madoff seemed to have an unlimited supply of capital from new investors because he had the reputation for having unbelievable returns and trustworthy business. He built this trust with his investors through many of his charitable works, which he actually ended up defrauding a couple of these charities in order to make money for himself and wipe their funds out. What also impressed investors was Madoff's investing plan, which is known as a split strike conversion, which sounds very reliable to the eager investor. It is a pretty confusing and detailed plan, but in layman's terms, it carries limited risk and in turn limited returns, but most of the time positive and quick returns. Split strike conversion investing in itself is not illegal, just challenging, and Bernie only claimed to use this tactic, although he never did and just used his illegal scheme. So the ethicality of Bernie Madoff's actions. Obviously, his Ponzi scheme was highly illegal and highly unethical. By the end of it, thousands of investors lost all of their life savings and money put into the firm, as he had to pay off the old investors who wanted their returns back. And because he wasn't actually making profit through stock trading, he couldn't pay back the new investors. During this time, his business made a recorded profit of $47 billion, in which he and the four other men took large returns for themselves. He let his greed and strive for success take over and commit these unethical acts. Bernie definitely did not have the common good of all people in mind during the time of his business, but only cared about his own personal wealth and success. The SEC tried to create a victims fund in order to pay back the losses, but because many of Madoff's investors were indirect through the other four men, the SEC had to reject many claims that weren't attached to his company's name. So the aftermath. Bernie Madoff's scheme came to a halting stop during the 2008 financial crisis. The stock market was dropping rapidly with the fall of the housing market, but his firm was still somehow recording positive returns and profit. Madoff's lies and shady business could no longer hold up, as the difference in the market and his supposed profits were too big to believe. He was arrested in 2008 and sentenced to a 150-year prison sentence and had to forfeit $170 billion that he made during the run of his business. However, the other four men were not prosecuted and were able to hold on to their money.